The wind rolled across the open plains like a whisper, carrying centuries of stories, brushing over the shy farmer Jacob Hale's land. Where he lived, quietly between golden wheat, fields and a barn older than memory itself. A place he preferred over the noise of nearby towns, because it matched his gentle nature and soft-spoken ways. Jacob wasn't the kind who sought trouble. He was the type who apologized, even when someone stepped on his boots. The kind whose eyes dropped whenever someone praised his crops, and whose heart secretly longed for connection, though he'd never admit it aloud. Life had always been predictable. Sunrise, animals, soil, sunset, until the night he found her. It was near dusk when he heard a crash behind the barn, soft but desperate, as though someone had fallen while trying not to be heard. Jacob grabbed his lantern, nerves prickling like wildfire up his spine, and stepped cautiously toward the dark side of the barn where the moonlight barely touched. And there, leaned against the wooden wall, breathing hard, wounded and exhausted, was a young Apache woman. Her braids were messy with dust, her clothes torn, her skin scraped with branches and dirt. Yet her posture radiated a fierce pride even in pain. She didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't run. She simply looked at him with eyes filled with both warning and plea, as if saying, "If you call for others, I will vanish, but if you help me, I will remember." Jacob froze in place, his mind racing with fear, not fear of her, but fear of the consequences. The territory was tense. Settlers whispered rumors and exaggerated tales about Apache raids, and harboring one could get a man jailed, or worse. But Jacob saw that she wasn't an enemy. She was injured, hunted, and alone. Something deep inside him, perhaps. A quiet courage he never knew he had, stepped forward before his feet even moved. "You're hurt," he whispered, trying not to startle her. She didn't answer, but her eyes softened just enough to let him come closer. With trembling hands, Jacob guided her into the barn and hid her behind stacked hay bales, a place only he ever went. He brought her water, tore cloth for her cuts, and worked through the night cleaning her wounds. She spoke only a few words in broken English, telling him her name, Nayeli, meaning, "I love you," or "You are loved" in her language, though Jacob wouldn't learn that until much later. As days passed, he kept her hidden from passing riders and nosy neighbors, bringing her food, blankets, and whatever herbs he could gather. At first their moments were awkward, Jacob shyly looking away whenever she studied him with curious intensity, Nayeli watching him with quiet skepticism, but slowly the silence between them turned warm, like a fire that started from a spark neither could deny. She began to smile at him, faint but genuine. He found himself talking more, telling her about his wheat, his dreams, and how he never fit in among loud-mouthed settlers. She listened, not in confusion, but in interest, as if she saw pieces of him even he didn't understand. And one night, as he was about to leave the barn, she lightly held his wrist to stop him. "You help me," she said softly. "Apache, do not forget." Jacob didn't know what that meant, but it stayed in his chest like a warm ember. After a week, Nayeli regained her strength. Before dawn one morning, she stood in the barn doorway, ready to leave. Jacob felt a strange ache in his chest, realizing he didn't want her to go. She stepped closer than she ever had before, looked into his eyes, really looked, and placed a hand over his heart in a gesture he didn't understand, but one that made his breath tremble. Then she was gone, disappearing into the dawn like the last star before morning. Jacob didn't expect to see her again, but 3 days later he woke to the sound of drums. Dozens of Apache riders filled the edge of his fields, their horses lined with feathers and leather, their faces calm but unreadable. And at the front, sitting tall and proud on a painted horse, was Nayeli, but now she wasn't the wounded stranger he had saved. She was adorned in traditional patterns, her chin lifted with purpose, her eyes glowing like sunrise. She rode forward as Jacob's knees nearly turned to dust, and the entire world seemed to stop breathing. She pointed to him, then spoke in a clear voice that could be heard across the field. "This man sheltered me when danger hunted me. My people honor courage and heart. We come to ask." She paused, and Jacob felt the earth tilt for his hand. The settlers watching from a distance gasped. Jacob nearly fainted. Nayeli smiled, small, knowing, beautiful, because she already understood something he had yet to say. He had saved her life, but she had returned to claim his heart. And for the first time, the shy farmer felt something greater than fear, something like destiny moving toward him on horseback. Jacob had never been the center of attention before. He was the man people forgot in crowds, the neighbor others described as quiet. What was his name again? But now, as Apache warrior stood proudly on his land and Nayeli waited, with a calm certainty that shook him to his core, he felt hundreds of eyes watching him, judging him, expecting him to speak. His throat tightened like a rope as he stepped forward, dust swirling around his boots, legs trembling so badly he wondered if he'd collapse before reaching her. His barn, where she had once hidden, felt like it was watching too, as though the wooden beams held memories of whispered conversations and secret glances. Nayeli dismounted, stepping gracefully onto the soil with a confidence that made Jacob feel both terrified and honored. She approached him slowly, not as someone asking for acceptance, but as someone offering a choice. The Apache elders behind her watched silently, their expressions unreadable, their presence both powerful and respectful. Jacob swallowed hard. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't handsome, he wasn't brave in the way others were, but he had protected her. And that act, small as it felt to him, had rippled into something larger than himself. "Jacob Hale," Nayeli said softly, standing close enough for him to see the faint scar above her eyebrow from the night she arrived at his barn. "I returned not because you hid me. I returned because you showed heart." Her words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Jacob wanted to answer, but his voice was lost somewhere in the dust between them. Villagers gathered along the fence line, whispering, gossiping, judging. They saw an Apache woman asking for a settler man's hand, something unheard of, something bold, something that defied every rumor and every fear people clung to. Jacob had always avoided conflict, always taken the quiet path. But as he looked at Nayeli, strong, brave, loyal, he realized the truth. Courage wasn't loud. It wasn't the roar of guns or the stomp of soldiers. Courage was the choice to open a barn door to someone in need. Courage was stepping forward even when your knees shook. Courage was choosing a future you never believed you deserved. Jacob finally found his voice, fragile, stuttering, but honest. "Nayeli, I don't know if I'm worthy." She touched his chest again, the same gesture from the day she left. But now he understood it was a sign of truth, connection, affection. "Let your heart decide worth," she whispered. And in that moment, Jacob did something he had never done before. He stood tall, not loud, not forceful, just tall. "If you'll have me," he said, voice steadying. "Then my answer is yes." A ripple moved through the Apache riders. Approval, acceptance, pride. The elders nodded. Nayeli's smile widened, soft but victorious, like she had known all along that this shy farmer had a warrior's heart hidden beneath quiet layers. She turned to her people and declared in Apache words Jacob didn't understand, but he felt the meaning through her tone. "He is chosen." The ceremony that followed wasn't flashy. It wasn't the dramatic scenes villagers expected. It was intimate, sacred, filled with chanting that rolled across Jacob's fields like blessings carried by the wind. They wrapped braided cloth around their joined hands. They spoke vows in two languages, but one meaning. And as the sun dipped beyond the hills, painting the sky the color of embers and hope, Jacob and Nayeli stood united, two worlds that weren't meant to meet, but whose hearts had chosen each other anyway. When the ceremony ended, Nayeli's people prepared to take her home so they could return later for proper celebrations. But before she left, she placed her forehead gently against Jacob's, a gesture of deep connection, and whispered, "You are not shy anymore. You are mine." Jacob felt heat rush through him as the Apache riders disappeared into the horizon. Life ahead would not be simple. Settlers would gossip, people would judge. But Nayeli had chosen him, and he had chosen courage. And that night, as the barn door creaked in the quiet wind, Jacob realized something profound. Sometimes love doesn't arrive softly. Sometimes it rides in with drums and sunsets. asking for your hand before you're ready, but exactly when you're meant to say yes. And so the shy farmer who once lived in silence found his story written in firelight, feathers, courage, and the unexpected love of an Apache woman who saw the heart he'd hidden from the world.